Have you been considering a larger 10-watt tri-band HT? The BaoFeng UV28 Plus from Radioddity is worth a look. One of Radioddity's newest releases is the BaoFeng UV28 Plus. As I mentioned earlier, the UV28 Plus is a 10-watt tri-band ham radio with GPS. In addition to these cool features, it also has a big 2800 milliamp hour battery, Bluetooth programming using a smartphone app, along with a BaoFeng CPS as well as chirp compatibility. As we get started, I need to let you know that while Radioddity occasionally provides radios for a review, I purchased this one using funds generated by the channel. Speaking of that, if you find this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. You'll also see a join button below the video where you can learn more about becoming a channel member, or you can click the thanks button to make a one-time contribution that helps support the channel. I really appreciate it. One of the things you'll notice as soon as you get the radio out of the box is its size. Unlike some popular small ham HTs like the UV22 and some from other suppliers, the UV28 Plus is pretty beefy. Now, it's nowhere near as big as the UV25, but it is a bit bigger than most 5-watt ham HTs. The buttons are easy to see and access even with big fingers, and the radio feels solid to the touch. It has all the standard features of other BaoFeng HTs, along with a large receive-only range in addition to the 3 ham transmit bands. This includes receive capability in the 136 to 174 MHz and the 220 to 260 MHz VHF band. There's also receive capability in the 350 to 390 MHz and the 400 to 520 MHz UHF band. Additionally, you can receive FM commercial broadcasts and the AM airband. I didn't see NOAA weather channels listed in the instructions, but as with other BaoFeng models, the NOAA weather channels are accessible with a long press on the 0 key. Let's take a look at what comes in the box and do a tour of the exterior of the radio. So here's the box UV28 Plus comes in. Let's take a look at what we'll find inside. So to charge the UV28 Plus, we've got a charge cradle. It's wired in on this side, US plug here. It's got a little insert to fit the UV28. It's labeled there in this. And unlike many of the other radios coming in from BaoFeng, it does not have a USB-C cable. But if you're like me, you've probably got about 3 dozen of them laying around the house. So it will charge with a USB-C, but it'll also charge here with this cradle. So for those of you who like charge cradles, you're in luck. From a security standpoint, it comes with a couple of things. One, it's got a belt clip, and you'll notice that this belt clip snaps into the back of the radio. It doesn't screw in, so that's kind of handy. And then it's got the lanyard that you can also attach to the radio if you like to keep them on your wrist. So from a security standpoint, typical belt clip and lanyard. The other thing the radio comes with is this little wired earpiece and push-to-talk, you know, the surveillance style or secret agent style wired headset. Plugs into the K connector on the side of the radio, and then you can run it up the side of your shirt and have it on your ear if you don't want other people to listen to what you're listening to, and you can be a little bit more discreet when you're using your radio in a crowd. So that's the little wired push-to-talk with earplug. And then the last thing we'll look at before we look at the radio is the antenna, and it's got one of those 16-inch antennas that screws in. You can see here it's the female or socket side here, and then it's a dual band antenna. Now it's a tri-band radio, so you'll need to get either a tri-band antenna or a 220 antenna if you're going to plan to use the 220 band. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of out of tune, and your performance won't be good, and probably won't be good for the radio. So here's the antenna, and it's the long one, so that's pretty cool. So let's do a power off tour of the radio, and you can see it's a little bit bigger than the typical radio. This is a UV5RM Pro, so it's a little bit bigger than the UV5, and you can see that the 28 is a little bit taller, and it's about the same width, so it's just a little bit bigger. On the front of the radio, we've got the screen, we've got the menu button, and then we've got an exit over here. Those are both in white, and then we've also then got the V and M button, which is the VFO memory mode switch button, and the AB button, and those are just kind of on rocker switches here. And then the up and down arrows are in that circular rocker panel on the front. We also have all the numbers, and instead of having shortcuts annotated here in the green ink, we've got letters, which is an indicator that you're going to be able to enter text into the various variables when programming the radio, and that's kind of unusual, and it's really pretty handy, especially if you like to program your radios via the radio faceplate instead of using the CPS. And then the speaker is in a grill behind these keypad numbers. You can see some openings right there. As we rotate the radio, see we have a side key here, and the push to talk button here. And the push to talk button, you can hear it maybe click. And it's a little looser than what I'm used to feeling, and then it'll rock a little bit because the button is mounted on the middle of it. So be sure to press hard if you tend to push on one of the edges, or just find the dots there in the middle of the key to press. On the back, you can see we've got the battery. Here's where the USB-C goes in for the battery, and it's got the LED for the charge status on the back of the battery, and then we can see that little sleeve to snap the belt clip in, and then the battery itself comes down off the top. And then it's labeled as a 2200 milliamp hour battery, and then the UV28 Plus with the ID number. And the ID is for the UV28 Pro, which means they're electrically the same. We'll put the battery on by clicking it into the bottom tabs and then snapping it on, and that's all there is to that. On this side, we've got the little rubber cover for the K1 connector. You can see those there. And so you can see that with the keys we've got and the other openings, that this does not have an IP protection score. It's heavy, it's firm, and so I think it's pretty rugged, but it doesn't have that IP protection, so you're not going to want to use it out in a heavy rainstorm, and certainly not want to submerge it. On the top, we've got here an LED that shows red or green depending on whether it's receiving or transmitting. The SMA with the male end or the plug side here for the antenna, and the on-off and volume control is listed right there. And then here on the back of the battery, I don't know if you can see that, there is a little loop for that lanyard that we looked at. Instead of having a flashlight, we have a little translucent plastic here, dark color, and that's where the GPS receiver is, since this is a GPS-enabled radio. So that's the UV28 Plus exterior tour. Before we jump into a power on tour, let's talk about a couple of things to look for during the power on tour itself. First, the radio boots up pretty fast and announces the radio's mode using a male voice. You'll also notice that the screen is very attractive, and the menus have not only been subdivided into more functional groupings, the programmers have added some different colors and shading that are pretty cool too. To help manage the 1,000 channels, the memories can be placed in up to 10 zones. This really helps in memory management. You're able to arrange your memories in groups that make sense to you. These groups can be based on geography if you travel a lot, or by function if you use this as part of your emergency communications kit. Last in this short list is the built-in GPS system. The system in the UV28 Plus is the same system used in the UV17 Pro with GPS and the UV25 Plus. The GPS system in the UV5RM Plus works differently and has different displays, and I haven't been able to get them to work well together. So be mindful if you're planning on getting a group of friends together and using the GPS. there is some model matching that you'll need to keep in mind. Let's jump to our power on tour. So let's do our power on tour of the radio. I'm going to put it up near the microphone so you can hear the boot up voice as it comes on.
Frequency mode.
So you can hear the voice is a male voice. And I've done some programming on this. And so this is the channel mode here. If I go AB, I can move down here. And you can see it comes a little bit brighter white where the upper turns to kind of a gray. And so if I press the VFO mode here, you can see the full-size fonts here with a frequency that is in the memory. A long press on this will give you the voltage of your battery. You can see the voltage there. And so we'll go back to that larger font just so you can have a sense of what that is. And then I'm going to go back up here to my VHF call, and you can see I've got zone 1. I've got 3 zones set up in the radio. It's zone 1, channel 1, high power. You can see the little satellite there for the GPS indicator. And then you can see the battery indicator. It says A, and then it's got a signal strength indicator. And those are the same kinds of icons you see there on the bottom. So it's really a pretty nice screen. If I had a complaint, I'd try to use a little bit bigger font when I'm in channel mode, but it is what it is. Now, let's look at our menus, and you can see here with our menus that we've got a couple of nice improvements with this radio. So we'll press the menu. And so you can see we've got some nice color changes here. We got a bit of an orange. The background, instead of just being white, is kind of a tan color. And there's a little bit of color in the icons themselves. And so if we go in here, we can go into bank. If I select it again, you can see that I've got 3 banks selected, and I can move between banks using this. I'm going to back out of this. I can go into my scan menu, Bluetooth menu. I can turn it on and off. And I use that if I'm going to use the app that you can program the radio with. If you're not going to use it, turning it off will save battery. And then we can go down to radio settings. This is all of the stuff you're used to seeing: step, squelch, power save, and all of that kind of stuff. There are a couple of things to point out to you here. I can program the side key and that's side key number 2, the bottom one here, with several choices. And then I can go up here to push to talk ID. And then with that, if I'm going to use the GPS system, I'm going to want to set that so that it sends the ID, which is basically DTMF signaling in this radio GPS scheme. So I can set it to beginning of the transmission, end of transmission, or both. And then if I go further up, I can go with my ANI edit, and this is where I'm going to set the radio's number, and so I'm going to do that. And it comes as, I think, 100, and for it to work in the GPS, it needs to be above that. So 101, 102, 103, and the other radios in your group have to have different numbers. If we go down to the GPS menu, we can go look in here. We can turn it on and off. We need to set the time zone so it knows where we are, and then we can set the GPS mode. It's GPS, BDS, or a combination of the two. I have, as you can see here, have it set as GPS. Back out of here, we can program our channel. And here it's kind of handy because all of the things you need to program your channel are all grouped together. So it makes it much easier to program a channel from the radio itself. So let's go back in here. And then we go to radio info, which is the last thing. Gives us a quick view. There's that ANI DTMF code 101 there, and then the firmware and the hardware. So that's the menu. And so having the menu subdivided into sections like it is here. The other thing I'll point out is that I didn't find it in the instructions, but a long press on 0 will get you to the weather channels. And then you can do the up and down.
52 and showing reported 46. Observations for southern Arizona. It was sunny.
And then another long press on that will take you back to the standby mode of your radio. Here on this side, a short press on side key 1 turns on the FM radio. A long press turns on the alarm. And then a short press on the side key also goes into radio. That you can set. So there's like 5 choices. And so those are the buttons, and that's how the radio works. Other than that, set your channel either by typing it in or using the up and down, and then talk by pressing the press to talk. A long press on the AB button is going to put you into the GPS mode. And you can see that I've been working here with the radio for a bit, and it's even in my house, it's been able to pick up a GPS position. And so my place is where I am now. The GPS is green, which means that it has an indicator. And then those are the other numbers. And so if I had other radios that I was with, I'm number 1. If I wanted to get a position report from number 2, I'd select number 2. And we'll show you how that works here in a separate clip. But accessing the GPS is through that AB switch with a long press. So we'll go back down to where we are, my place, and it says position success. So this is the display for the GPS. And then a short press on the back key will take you out of that, and you can see the GPS indicator was colored white, which means that it is achieved a lock. So that's our power on tour of the BaoFeng UV28 Plus. The UV28 Plus is advertised as a 10-watt radio. Let's put it on the power meter and see what we get. I've got it connected to my MFJ874. It's advertised as a 10-watt radio, so I've got the range set at the 20-watt level, and so we'll be reading the power output on the second arc from the bottom. So on the VHF call channel 146.520 with high power, let's take a look at what we get. And so it looks like it's about 8.1, maybe 8.2. That's pretty respectable for a radio in this price range. Let's go to 220 now and see what we get up there. Again, high power. And it looks like it's about 2.93 watts. And then let's make one more power check in the UHF range. So here we are on the UHF call channel. Again, high power. And it's about 6.1 watts. So for a radio in this price range, that's pretty reasonable for an advertised 10-watt radio. Here's a brief snapshot of the smartphone app in action. So here's the app that we use to program the UV28. And I've got it here, and I'm going to start by picking the brand. It's a BaoFeng. And then from using it before, I know that the UV28 is down here at the bottom, so it's the Pro Series. And then I've got the Bluetooth on my radio on, so I went into the menus and set that, so I hit connect. It's walkie-talkie. The connection is successful. And so now I can read from the radio, and so I'm going to click read. The radio is flashing green and red, and it says programming. And so with that completed, I'm going to go to profile, and here's all the information from my radio. And so my channel information is here. If I click channel, it gives me a list of the channels that I can deal with. And this is currently channel number 1. It gives me that kind of same display, except it's in a more of a grid right here. I've named it VHF call. Here's the frequency and all the information that you normally use to program a channel. And you just work your way through it. This is not a tutorial for the app, and so I'm going to move here pretty quick. I'm going to go into frequency mode. I can set the band. I can set where it comes up. And then my optional features gives me all of the stuff in the menus. And so I can work through that. So transmitter, dual receive, the beep, scan modes, all of that stuff is available to me here. And so here's the DTMF stuff. So I've programmed this radio to be radio number 101. And we saw that in the Power On tour. And so all this stuff is in there. If I want to save it, I can hit save. Otherwise, I can go back and make choices. If I hit save, it'll give me the opportunity to name it and number it so I can keep it in my phone, which is handy. That way, if I mess things up, then it's not going to cause me to have to start over. I can go back to a stored profile. If I go back to home, this takes me back there. And then if I select profile, you could see any of the other saved profiles. And so the app is really pretty handy, and it's a nice feature to use when programming this radio. If I'm going to program a lot, I still like to use a CPS, but for small changes, or if you don't have a Windows computer where you can use that CPS, the app is a very nice feature of this radio. Radioddity also has a BaoFeng CPS for this radio on their website, and you can use the UV17 Pro with GPS choice in Chirp as well. As you'll see in this clip, there are some buttons below the channel list you use to navigate between zones when programming. I didn't see an option to program zones, or as Chirp calls them, banks, in the Chirp program. Now, let's take a look at the UV28 Plus's signal purity. So I've got the UV28 Plus connected to my Tiny SA Ultra, and keep in mind this is consumer-grade test equipment, but it gives us an idea of how things are doing in terms of the signal purity of this little radio. So I've got it set on the VHF call frequency, 146.52. These vertical lines represent the areas of the harmonic. It's what the Tiny SA displays when you're selecting the harmonic in the measure menu. And this horizontal line represents the minus 16.02, which is 25 microwatts, which is part of that limit of 40 dB below and no greater than 25 microwatts for any of the harmonics. So let's press the talk and see what we get here. I'll let it run through a couple times. Okay, so this is better than what some of them that I've looked at, but you can see that the primary is, at about minus 2 dB, and so the first harmonic is at about 10 below, which, doesn't meet that 40 below, and it's a little bit above that 16.02. So one of the things about budget class radios in 2 meters is they tend to be kind of noisy, and this radio is no exception. It's better than a lot of them I've looked at, but it technically doesn't meet the FCC requirements as demonstrated with this Tiny SA Ultra. Now let's go up to the 220 band, see what we look like there. So here we're in the 1.25 meter, using the 1.25 meter FM call channel, and let's see what we've got. We've got the Tiny SA reconfigured for this frequency. It scanned through a couple of times, and we can see we don't have any harmonics on the 220 band, so on this band the radio is clean. I'll link to a recent video I did on using the GPS system on the end card to this video. The radio is different, but the GPS system is the same. In the meantime, here's a quick snapshot of the GPS system in action. On the left is the UV25 Plus, and then on the right is the UV28 Plus. And you can see that they found their position, and they're sitting right next to each other, and so their positions are the same. Now I'm going to use this clip in both reviews, so if you're thinking to yourself, hey, I've seen this before, well, you're right. So there we are. We've got these two. Now I'm going to move the UV28. So I've got my other radio on that bench near that waste can here at this little park. Both of these work the same way. So here's my place position, 10.0 and 58.5, and I'm going to send that over to the other radio on the bench. That's just over here. And I could hear that radio squawk, and so I'm got a good sense that that information 10.0 and 58.5 is now listed as number 2's position on that radio. Well, the sun's starting to come up here, so the screen's a little harder to see. We'll try to get it in the shade here. and we're going to ask for a position for contact number 2. And there we see the contact position number 2 information came through. So that's how the GPS works. I found it to be a little finicky. The send data works really well most of the time. The receive data, like we just did, sometimes doesn't come through as it ought to. But all in all, it's a pretty impressive little system. Let's wrap this up with some pros and cons. First, the pros. I really like the feel and heft of this radio. While I like small radios too, the UV28 Plus's size, battery capacity, and overall build quality is impressive. Next, if you spend time in the outdoors, having a radio with GPS capability is helpful. Even if you're just interested in knowing where you are, having a GPS-enabled radio is a good safety factor. Being able to query others in a group is just that much better. I also like the color screen and font selection. All the info you need to see is easily available. Like most screens using this technology, however, they can be a bit hard to see in bright sunlight, so be prepared to shade the screen in some environments. The app programming via Bluetooth is also a plus. Last, being able to set up zones for your memory channels is a big improvement over just having a list of 1,000 channels. I've suggested this several times in radio reviews, and I'm really pleased the zone function is finding its way into newer radios. My next suggestion would be to set up the channel database with a master list of channels and then having the ability to place each channel into one or more zones, depending on your channel management plan. Now, for a couple of cons. I've noticed that the PTT button is a bit weak. You have to press in the middle of the button for the radio to transmit. If you press the top or bottom of the rectangular button, you feel it move, but you have to continue to press harder to complete the contact. Next, depending on your personal preferences, this next item could be either a pro or a con. As I've mentioned already, the radio is bigger and heavier than many on the market. While the large battery should give you plenty of operating time, you'll definitely feel the radio on your belt or in your pocket. Also on the negative side is the 2-meter signal purity. I realize that some might not care that much considering this is a fairly low-power radio. It's still frustrating that the BaoFeng engineers haven't fixed this. The good news is that there's been an explosion of 70-centimeter repeaters, so avoiding the 2-meter band is an easy solution to the dirty signal issue. Again, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Join me over here for an expanded look at the GPS system, and don't forget the affiliate links below. Thanks for watching, and 73.